Okay, so I decided to go with a picture of my beloved Maya this week. Maya and Jaden are my two favorite characters on the show. And so I want to celebrate Maya because we only have one episode left after this one. Also, I took a lot of notes again this week. So, most likely, I'm going to have to make two videos because there are several legal points that I would like to make and just a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. Okay. The last episode ends with Raymond passing out in court and becoming unconscious. We, as the audience, if you're like me, you probably assumed that he had a heart attack. He's older, he doesn't have the best diet. That's what you're probably thinking. So, this episode starts. They keep us in suspense for like 3 minutes. I also love the fact that it started with like muted voices as though that's what Raymond was hearing. And so they put us through all that, him, being rushed to the hospital, everything. Then the doctor comes out and we find out Ray is actually going to be improved in his life. Turns out he just needed a pacemaker because it was an electrical issue with his heart, which isn't it so interesting that our hearts run on electrical impulses? If there's any doctors that watch this and you want to say more in the comments about, what was going on with with Raymond, would love to hear it. Um, and so when Lorraine is being told this by the doctor, what we see is Rusty is comforting Lorraine. He's got his arm around her. And what I'm thinking is obviously she's in shock. Her husband has just passed out in court. They're at the hospital now. She's probably not thinking clearly. But what I was thinking is if she is allowing Rusty to touch her physically during such an emotional, raw moment, and then right before this, she lets him get her water, I'm thinking she cannot possibly think that he's a murderer. Because when you're in your most raw and vulnerable state, you don't care about what's polite. And so if she really thought that Rusty killed Carolyn, she would have said, like, don't touch me. Or no, I don't want water from you. We know that Lorraine has no problem speaking her mind. So that's what was running through my mind at this time. And then what I also was thinking about is I think I was told this during one of my internships before I graduated from law school, but I remember, I've talked to y'all many times about how uh, trial is theater. And so one thing that I was told is that if I as a woman, if I have a male client who was charged with a violent crime, you should try to touch them a lot because the jury will think he could not have done anything that horrible. He can't be a monster if this woman is touching him. And I actually did try that. Sometimes when this was before I was a licensed attorney, this was during an internship that I had the summer before I graduated from law school. So I was allowed to sit at the defense table and I was helping the first chair, but I wasn't. First chair means the main attorney on the case, but I wasn't an attorney of record on this case. And so I was doing that. And then one of the deputies came over and said, "Oh, ma'am, you can't touch him." But I tried it and I got a few touches in and I'm pretty sure the jury saw. Um so after we see the whole hospital scene. We see Nico is in the car with Tommy and he's like, listen, we got to move for a mistrial. Like the jury just saw Rusty, come to Raymond's aid. He looks like a hero. Like we got to move for a mistrial. Now, at this point in time, I do not necessarily agree with that, but I understand where Nico is coming from. Again, trial is theater and it's all about perception. Um, so, in response to this, Tommy says the jury is more equipped to envision what happened that night than either of us. Now, I think what he means is that the jury doesn't know Rusty, so they have no bias against him. But I don't agree with the statement, and I'll tell you why. And this is why I said in an earlier video that I wish that there was some of voir dire that we would have gotten to see, because we don't know anything about the jury. We don't know what they do for a living, how old they are, nothing. And this concept of a jury of your peers, it's a myth. So the role that is pulled from to select people for jury duty is the voter roll. So you can become registered to vote once you turn 18. So you can have an 18-year-old on your jury who is basically a child and hardly knows anything about life. You can have somebody who didn't graduate from high school on your jury. You could have a stay-at-home mom on your jury who's never held a job outside the home. So, like, for example, me, a jury of my peers is a jury full of lawyers. The lawyers are my peers. I'm not going to end up with a jury full of lawyers. So most people are not going to have a jury of their peers decide what happens to them at trial. That's just not the way that things work. And so I also want to tell y'all, so as at the end, when both sides rest, there's no more evidence to be presented. What will happen is, before the jury are released to deliberate, the judge will tell the jury, will read a set of instructions to the jury, and both sides agree on what those instructions are. So basically, the instructions, among other things, will read what the statute is for the crimes that Rusty is being charged with. And so, for example, I don't know how many of you have read statutes. If you're not a lawyer, you've probably never read a literal statute. So statutes, like, they're easy for lawyers to understand because we've been trained on how to understand them. But I think to a lay person, a statute is going to be very complicated because there's lots of commas and lots of, well, this only applies in this instance, and if this, then, like, legalese, as they say. So if, for example, let's say you've got an 18-year-old on your jury, or let's say you've got somebody who didn't graduate from high school on your jury. When the judge reads the statute for example, first-degree murder, if there's something in that statute that a jury member does not understand, the judge can't explain it. If the jury has a question, all the judge can do is read the statute again. That's it. So if somebody says, what does that mean? The lawyers and the judge cannot answer that. And also, so what happens, I don't know if this is the same in every state, but this is what would happen in Georgia. So if the jury has a question, the jury would let the bailiff know, okay, we have a question. They would write down the question. They'd give it to the bailiff. The bailiff would take the question to the judge. The judge, it would be, the lawyers would be notified. The jury has a question. You have to come back to court. Both sides will come back to court because you'll be released. Like, you'll still be in the area because you have no idea when they can come back with a verdict, but you won't be in the courtroom itself. So you'll be called back to court. The jury will stay in the jury room. The judge will read what the question is, and then both sides have to agree on how the judge is going to answer the question. So if the question is, well, we don't understand, for example, if it was like, if Rusty is charged with first-degree murder, which I think he is, but a lot of times when you're charged, lesser included offenses are lesser offenses are included with that. So let's say he's charged with first-degree murder. On the jury form, the jury could also have the option to say second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter. It just depends on your state. So if their question is, well, we don't understand what premeditation means. Like I said, the judge can't explain that. So the judge will probably say to both sides, well, do you just want me to read the statute again? And both sides will probably say, Yeah, I guess that's the best that you can do. This is about to end. I'm starting another video.